Good afternoon, y'all. Before we get into today's how-to video, I'd like to take one quick moment to address the theme of this game, side effects. My goal in this video is not to make light of these conditions or to comment on the real-world accuracy of them. I'm simply here to present the game, its components, and how to play the game. If themes involving mental illness, substance abuse, or dark humor are something that you find upsetting or you would rather avoid, you may want to skip this or carefully consider whether or not this game would be a good fit for you before purchasing or playing. That being said, let's get into it. Side effects. All right, side effects is just a simple card game. And what components do you have in a card game? Well, you've got a deck of cards, a big one. In this deck, there are going to be 4 types of cards. You're going to have disorder cards. You're going to have your treatment cards. You're going to have therapy cards. You're going to have episode cards. I will get into in a minute what each card does, but for now, in the setup, the first thing you want to do is take the entire deck. You want to separate your disorders into their own separate pile, which I've already done here. You can see I've got all the disorders in their pile. And then the rest of the cards, episode, therapy, and treatment cards, can be set to the side for now in their own separate deck. Shuffle up your disorder cards. And then you're going to deal 4 different disorders into each player's psyche. And your psyche is just essentially your play area. So you'll start with the deck. I'm going to start with player 2, which is going to be here in front of me. I'm going to set that off to the side. All right, there's 1 for them. There's 1 for me. There's 2 for them. 2 for me. 3 for them. 3 for me. 4 for them. 4 for me. Now here's a good look at something that you have to do in the setup process. If you ever get a disorder dealt into your psyche in the setup that you already have, you have to replace that with a different one that you don't have. You can never have more than 1 disorder in the psyche in front of you in your play area. So now that both player 1 and player 2 have 4 different disorders in their psyche, the disorder cards can now be shuffled into the big deck with the treatment cards, therapy cards, and episode cards. So we'll do that. Let's get this big old deck shuffled here. All right. All right, and once the deck has been shuffled together, you want to deal each player 4 cards to form their starting hand. All right. And then I'm going to set their hand maybe right here. Got my hand here in front of me. And that's the setup. That's it. Each player's got 4 disorders in their psyche in front of them. They've been dealt 4 cards from the entire deck after the disorders have been shuffled in with the rest of the cards. And you're ready to play. Okay. And what a player can do on their turn, the first thing that happens is you draw 2 cards from the deck. once you've drawn your 2 cards, the next step is to play cards. And you can play a maximum of 2 cards from your hand. And the way that that works is there's a couple of different things that you can do. The treatment cards that are in your hand can be played on top of the disorders that you have in your psyche. For instance, I've got an anxiety card in my hand, and I can play as my first card play. I can use that treatment to treat anxiety. So now of the 4 disorders that I have in my psyche, one of them has been treated, okay? Now, if you look in my hand, I also have a treatment for depression, which I might want to play as my second action, in which case it would be the end of my turn, and then it would be player 2's turn to go. But I have, because of what's in my hand, I've got a couple of other different things that I can do here. Let's take depression back, and I'll walk you through what each of these other cards does. So episode cards, you're having an episode. If you'll notice, each of these cards, disorder cards, has a punishment penalty printed on the card in text. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll read a couple of them to you. The suicidal thoughts card says discard your entire hand. Madness card says discard all drugs on the psyche, and so on and so forth. You can take an episode card, you can, as one of your 2 card plays, you can play it on top of one of the disorders that's in your opponent's psyche, and then you force them to take that punishment that is listed on the card. And that's not a good one for me to have played here on their madness card, because they don't have any drugs in their psyche. So maybe as an action, what I can do with you're having an episode, I would come over here, I would play that on top of their suicidal thoughts card, which has the punishment of discard their entire hand. So in that case, they would have had to discard their entire hand as punishment for me playing that episode card on them. And at the end of that turn, I would discard the you're having an episode card onto the discard pile. And like I said, if that had been my second action, my turn would be over, and then it would be the next player's turn to go. So let's give them, let's say I played this depression card, though, like I said a minute ago. I took back my you're having an episode, and let's give player 2 back their hand. So they would draw 2 cards off the top. All right. Now, I didn't go over the therapy card on player 1's turn, but we both have anorexia in our psyche. And so one thing that I'll say about these therapy cards is that they can be used to treat any disorder in your psyche except for tremors, okay? There are no tremors out here right now. Maybe I'll show you that in a second. But therapy cards, it's like a wild treatment card, and it can be used to cure anything, everything except tremors. You want to be conservative in using these therapy cards, though, because if you take a look at anorexia, it can only be cured with therapy cards. So that's one disorder that there is no treatment for in the deck. So the only option that you have to treat that is to play your therapy cards. So let's just say that's something that player 2 decided to do. They're going to lay therapy on top of anorexia to treat it. Now, the only difference when you treat a disorder with the therapy card, that card and the card under it go into the discard pile. So essentially, you would be open to receive that disorder again in the future if it was played against you by an opponent. And let's get into how that would work. All right. As you begin to treat your disorders in your psyche, you'll notice that these cards, let's just take this one, for instance, this blue card that treats depression. I have it in my psyche, but because I'm taking this medication to treat my depression, the symptoms of this medication are going to be impotence, suicidal thoughts, and anorexia. Well, if you look at my psyche here, I already have impotence, I already have anorexia, but I do not have suicidal thoughts. So let's say that, and I'm just going to, for the sake of examples here, let's say that player 2 had suicidal thoughts in their hand. Well, their first card play was to treat their anorexia with therapy, and on their second card play, maybe they want to inflict me with suicidal thoughts because I'm vulnerable to it based off of the treatment that I'm taking to cure my anxiety or to treat my anxiety. So now I have 5 disorders in my psyche and that I have to treat now. So now I have to treat all 5 instead of the 4. And so that's how card play by your opponent can essentially slow your progress down by adding extra cards. But let's say that, in their hand, they also had treatment for suicidal thoughts. So I know I've given them 3 actions here, but I'm just showing you kind of an example of what some of these cards and how they can play. They could have given me an episode, so on and so forth. All right, so I messed up a minute ago. I put my treatment for suicidal thoughts on top of madness, but let's come over here and put it on the suicidal thoughts there and correct it. So now the only 2 disorders that player 2 has to treat are madness and impotence. And let's just skip ahead to maybe a future turn where, if this is what the psyche of player 2 looked like at the beginning of their next turn, let's say they draw their 2 cards. Well, they have a treatment for impotence and madness in their hand. And so for their first play, they play impotence. For their second play, they play the madness card. And if you'll notice now, every disorder in their psyche has been treated, and that's how you win the game. You have to treat every disorder that's in your psyche. So play would continue back and forth, draw cards, play cards, until the first player to treat all of their disorders wins the game. And that is the basic rundown of side effects. The only other action in the game that I didn't get to was bargaining. You can trade cards back and forth between players, and they call that bargaining in the rule book. There are some caveats to that, though. The rule book says that you may make deals with other players, but be sure to adhere to these rules. You cannot put more than 2 cards into play on your turn. You cannot put any cards into play when it's not your turn. And you may give and receive cards when it's not your turn, as long as they're not put into play. So, may or may not bargain. I don't do a lot of bargaining in games. I always feel like I always hate to give the other player cards or resources that would give them an opportunity to make a better play against me. Catan, for instance, I always hate trading in that game because I don't ever want to give my opponent a leg up on me unless I'm just going to win the deal in major fashion. If I gain 3 resources or 3 cards to your 1 or something, I may consider making the deal. So you may not do any bargaining in your game. I probably don't. But this is a very short game, 10 to 30 minutes. It's 2 to 8 players. The box says 14 and up. I don't know that I would let a 14-year-old play the game. I know every household is going to be different. I just feel like the subject matter in this game is really mature. These are serious disorders, and I know at one point or a time every family probably goes through one or if not more of these. And so I just feel like if the children 14, if they've been educated on these subject matters, and if they seem to be mature and they understand the severity of some of these issues, then sure, let them play, but just make sure that they understand that this game is not intended to make light of these situations. But it's a quick, easy to teach, fun to play card game, back and forth. Always have a good time playing it. But just definitely just be aware of the subject matter, and when you're picking this up, just do your research. Especially if you're buying it for your children, I don't know that I would necessarily buy it as a family game, but this might be something that you could bust out at a game night for adults, as long as there's not going to be anybody there that's going to be overly sensitive to the topics and the subject matter. So, but I hope y'all enjoyed the how-to, the teach, and please continue to follow along for future content. If you liked it, please let me know. Throw a like on it. If you'd like to subscribe, that'd be great. I'd really appreciate that. But I'm enjoying doing this, and I'll be back pretty soon with the next one. And I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks again for stopping by. Take it easy.